Hello and welcome everyone to Smart Company, the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Doerre, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, tech expert, Grace Schroeder. Today, we're honored to have Derek Roush, founder and CEO of VocalPoint Consulting, a leader in the IT consulting space. So, Derek, what we generally like to do when we start these things off is to just, tell us about your journey, how you got started, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. And nice seeing you as well, Grace. So I guess the story started for me back around 2002 when I was hired to work for a company called Exponets that was purchased by Avaya about a year or two later. And then Avaya kept our entire division on for maybe another year or two before they chewed us up, spit us out, laid off the entire division. One of those things where you feel like your entire world is just crumbling. But little did I know, since we went from 3,400 employees and I was one of like 700 left, by the time I hung up the phone, my phone was ringing with about 4 different offers from other companies, because they knew we were the only ones left that were actually performing. So needless to say, I worked for a couple of Avaya business partners, then got recruited by a company called Paytech, which was a large carrier. And Paytech was good for a while, until it became Windstream, went through a lot of M&A, and I was on board there for about 5 years, supporting their Avaya and Cisco channels. And in 2010, I just finally said to my wife, I'm like, I really feel like I want to do something different. I want to do sales better. I was just tired of all the spin selling and shoving square pegs into round holes. And I said, I think I can do it better on my own. And thankfully she supported me, because the first couple of years was rough. But we've been doing this for 15 years now, and just loving it.
It's the same. We've been doing this for 15 years, and I can definitely relate to staring at the ceiling, wondering how you're going to hit payroll the next day.
Oh, yeah.
But it takes that amount of investment in yourself and time to stand up a new business. Let me ask you this. What are I sort of made it out of telecom in 2006 when I left Quest Communications, but I'm still tangentially involved with, we have some clients that have created automated, orthopedic appointment booking using Amazon Lex Lambda, moving to Bedrock Stack, and we have clients that are telecom agents, channel partners, if you will. And so I know a little bit about how the agencies have turned into TSBs now. But what do you see the change in what clients look to you for today versus when you started?
I think a lot of clients, especially in that small to mid-market, so we like to play in the space where I say about 100 employees up to about 2,000. And we've got some clients that we've worked with that are bigger than that. We've got a lot that are smaller, right? But that's kind of our sweet spot. And in that mid-market space, I feel like a lot of CIOs are so overworked. They don't have time to do the research on all the vendors. They don't know where to go to. And we've got a video on our website that kind of tells that story, where you might have something that starts in a boardroom, and maybe it's around customer experience or whatever. It's all about, let's increase our customer experience and, our name brand. And it might be something where the CMO pushes down to the IT director or the, VP of IT. Hey, go and find me a new platform that will integrate with our Salesforce and HubSpot, and we can integrate all this stuff, run KPIs, and start really looking to increase customer experience. That's all great, but what's that IT director going to do? Because number one, IT directors hate telecom. So he's going to go to Google and he's going to look up, who's the best in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Maybe pick the top 5, bring those guys in for demos, Then he's going to get a stack of, proposals after sitting through these hours of demos. And then he's got to decide which ones are actually going to, give him the outcome that he's looking for. And what we tell clients is stop all that kind of madness and don't do an RFP where it's a race to the bottom. Let us come in. We come in and say, we'll run that process. We'll put together a scope of work and a roadmap to get you from point A to point B, and then we'll deliver our recommendations. But if you're going with our recommendations, again, to your point, if we're, getting a commission from a TSD or from a supplier, then we're not going to, whack them upside the head with a huge consulting fee. We do charge a fee on the front end for our time. And that's just so if the client wants to take our work and buy from somebody else, they can do that.
Yeah.
But if they're buying through us, well, then we're, negotiating those contracts. We're helping solution design. We're project managing the install, and we've got a very deep and large team of project managers. So we can be there throughout the entire life cycle of that product and that term of that contract for the client.
And how do you, and we have the same, so we build bespoke solutions, right? Bespoke software solutions. You're building sort of bespoke technology and connectivity solutions. How do you stay on top of the land of the possible, with the new technologies that are falling out of the heavens and hitting us on the head every day?
Well, let's see. Yesterday I was at an AI conference. This morning I had a meeting with the FBI with InfraGard. So, it's like just staying on top of things is, conference after conference and meetings after meetings and just, constant training where we can stay aware of what's going on. Because right now our portfolio is about 700 plus suppliers. That's a lot of suppliers to understand and know their platforms and what they do. And there's no way in heck that we're ever going to sell all of them. But at the end of the day, we want to have knowledge about what's out there just so that we can be agnostic when we sit in front of a client and just say, look, let's find the right solution. I don't care about, vendor names or, what they bring to the table. We're going to talk about if they're going to meet your outcomes or not.
When you talk to CIOs and CEOs and things, what is their base knowledge of AI? Is it a big part of your job educating, or do they come in with a relatively decent knowledge base?
Very little.
Mm-hmm.
What I see in the AI space, and we just kind of dabble a little bit in it, right? There's a gap right now in the market because you've got all these off-the-shelf bots, and Grace, I know you know this, but you can go to say like a core.ai or a yellow.ai, Observe, Replicant. They all serve certain purposes. A lot of them started like in the contact center space, and now they're able to dip in through their workflows into other parts of the business and maybe start driving some more business outcomes outside of the contact centers. But a lot of times clients go, well, that's great, but I don't necessarily need that off-the-shelf AI bot, but I know there's a place that I want to get to over here. Who's going to stand in the middle, in that gap, and help me structure my data and write the workflows and put all this together so that I can get from here to there? That's the big gap in the market right now. And, yesterday we were talking with a couple of firms that do fill that gap. But yeah, there's so much just nuance in that space right there.
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing the same gaps. People have a sort of a peripheral awareness of the tool sets that are out there, but they can't lock in on where do I start.
Yep.
And then the human capital isn't capable or experienced enough to help really internally. And so then they're in never land of large consulting firms, and the $10 million engagement people, and most people can't afford that. But now the tooling is getting so good that companies of all sizes, I think, can avail themselves of some of this great automation, and it's companies like yours that can help them, stair step through that process. I think it's a great future for all of us that have some experience in seeing, how the technology evolution is handled, and we've helped people through that migratory path before, to take them to the new, to the promised land of AI without betting the farm on it.
Yeah. In fact, I had a guy contact me yesterday from one of the TSDs, and they are trying to put together a package of, say, desktop as a service that would include your Microsoft licensing, your desktop, your storage, all of your cybersecurity, and now they're trying to also roll in an AI bot. So for a lot of these companies that are doing business in the U.S., and maybe they want to hire a BPO in the Philippines, right, to do some calling for them. Well, this AI bot actually will change, even if they're speaking English, it's going to change it to a English dialect, where they sound as if they're, actually an American, and just changing the voice. And they see connection rates just skyrocketing, because of that.
Yeah. Which one is that?
I don't know which AI company it is that's behind it. They're trying to package the deal together with one of the DaaS providers, and it's really a pretty economical package. It's maybe $100 a month per user, and you're getting all of that in one package.
You wonder what kind of lag there is, if there's how much, that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, in fact, I've got a buddy here that designed an AI bot, a voice bot, that for a DoD customer, and it was reviewing a bunch of applications, because they would get thousands of applications every week, and it would review all the applications, figure out which ones to call out to, and it would make the call out and do the front end interview, ask about 4 or 5 questions, and set up the interview for them to come in if they met the criteria. And the biggest part that he was trying to solve for was just the latency, and it's still there a little bit.
Yeah, and the latest Apple AirPods have real-time translation. So if you're talking to someone that's not speaking English, in my case, it will automatically translate it in your ears. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing. So you're currently obviously the CEO, founder of VocalPoint Consulting. Was there a moment in your career where you thought, the existing consulting industry or market was broken, and you're going to attack it a different way?
It's funny you ask that. So when I first started, I actually started just doing straight up consulting. I had no idea about this whole indirect channel, right? And so one of my first clients was a large PR firm in Midtown Manhattan. They had a big Nortel Option 11. They wanted to migrate it to a new platform. Didn't suit their needs. And they had like 2 floors of a building in that building. And so I was literally going back and forth with the CFO about our contract and trying to negotiate this contract. And they didn't want to pay an hourly rate because they were afraid of it just, skyrocketing on them. And I said, okay, look, how about if we do it in milestones? Every time we hit a milestone, you pay us this amount, and we'll cap it at this amount. I quickly figured out, when you budget for a 6-month project that turns into 9 or 12 months, you've got a gap of time that you're not getting paid for. So, I quickly figured out, man, this consulting gig, you can lose your shirt if you're not positioning yourself correctly. I mean, we're in the same boat right now trying to answer a RFP for 16 call centers out in Oregon that are meshed together. And it's the same thing. They want to cap it at a certain rate. So it's a balancing act, but consulting, straight up consulting, is tough. And I feel like what we're doing in the channel really solves a lot more than the big guys, because I had a public utility that reached out to us, a large public utility here in Florida. McKenzie came in and did their AI strategy report around use case governance and compliance, and they hand them a 72-page report and walk away, and they're charging seven figures.
Yeah.
And the guy looked at me, he goes, Derek, they're not even helping us implement this. He said, can you help us implement that strategy? I'm like, absolutely, that's what we do. So they could have engaged us on the front end. We would have done that for, a tenth of that, maybe 20% of that. And we would have come in and done the same work and gave them a better outcome, because we would have actually found the vendors that could give them the outcome they're looking for.
Yeah. Was there any sort of value to I'm assuming you looked at the McKenzie report to help with the execution of that. Was there, where do you think those companies play going forward? I've seen a lot to suggest that they're in trouble with that pricing model and with no execution, because frankly, it's not knowable if it can be executed.
If I'm not mistaken, it's funny you say that, Grace. If I'm not mistaken, I think I just saw an article earlier today that Accenture is laying off a whole slew of people around their AI division. And I think it's for that reason, right? They don't understand the end game, how to get there. This particular client, we haven't even gotten there yet. So we got set up in their portal as a preferred vendor. We got our NDA in place, banking details and all that kind of stuff. They haven't shared the whole report with us yet. So I'm eager to see, that's barring if the project even moves forward. I mean, because a ton of these AI projects just fall flat and nothing ever happens, right? So we'll see. That one's still kind of out there. But, I think a lot of clients are just struggling with understanding the terminology that's out there, because so much of it is promising big things, and really a lot of it is just machine learning and RPA, robotic process automation, stuff that we've been doing for years. Even back in the Avaya days, we were doing SQL database dips, right? To put in your banking details or whatever, and get some stuff like that. So a lot of it is just workflow automation, and that's been around for a long time. The whole generative AI piece, there's a lot of promise and little delivery right now in that area.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process, but I think people are looking for magic, and it's not magic yet. I think we implement a lot of sort of document ingestion, data extraction projects, and the thing that's in common is everybody's data's ugly, and data's got to get pretty. And if you can do that, then the machine will learn. So you got a new format? Well, it's going to figure out what that format should translate to. And you're not, in the OCR days, you're like, no, you got to go define it when something changes. AI is doing a pretty meaningful job of picking up the changes. We read payroll records, and we get a Paylocity one and an ADP one. And, the AI is sort of catching on to where the data is in each different format. So, we tend to stick to the boring stuff, right? We don't want to go to a doctor and say, hey, we're going to help you diagnose, what kind of cancer it is. We're going to go to them and say, hey, we're going to, produce more simpler reports for your patients to read coming out of your lab. We're going to explain in real language what this means so that they're not, panicked because they got the report before the doctor could get on the phone. So we're doing those types of expert witness testimony. Physicians have to assemble, and so there's very real, tangible use cases that, and I'm sure you see this too. Because the key is you have to bring along the humans in the companies, right? They need to get used to working with the agent. They need to know how to refine them, how to define new workflows for them, and that, to me, is sort of the elevation path of of workers in the future. We've managed to upskill some people that are fantastic at prompt engineering now. And we thought, no, it would have to be a developer. And guess what? These people that have the domain expertise, they have always known that the data could be, better, and they can get in there and help fix those things, and it's a great career path.
Yeah, in fact, yesterday in our conference, one of the AI engineers from one of the AI companies that was presenting, he was saying we're kind of in that age, like, in our age right now, in our age group, I mean, when we were growing up, you wouldn't hire somebody unless they had computer experience, right? Now, within the next year or two, you're not going to be hiring somebody unless they've got AI experience. So these kids, you're seeing them even going back to school and picking up certifications or other degrees around AI, because I think it's going to be so important on just how to work with it and understand it. In fact, I met with a company here just talking about, really real world use cases. There's a company here in Lake Nona, which is right outside south of Orlando. We call it Medical City. So you got like Nemours Clinic and the VA Clinic and UCF's medical school, UF's medical school, a whole bunch of guys in that one area. And there's a small company there that is actually using AI to do early cancer detection for breast cancer and other, aggressive cancers. And they're having tremendous results with it. And, those kind of use cases are the kind that you go, wow, that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
When you talk about tremendous success in that space, is it mostly aligned to, in terms of the functionality of AI, mostly about data management and informational management, or what is it exactly? Do you know?
Well, I think a lot of it is around how well these people are managing their data. Like there's a local company here that we're working with that got together with some engineers out of Harvard. In fact, the guy just hired the engineer that built Siri for Apple. And so really smart dudes. And so they're starting to pick up funding and starting to pick up a lot of steam, but they're all around positioning themselves as the guys that can come in and structure that data and put it all together. Like I said, that's the piece right now that we want to see, start to really elevate. And I think we're starting to see it.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Everyone's working their silos, and to remove those barriers, bring all that collective knowledge together and see the themes and the solutions. And I think that's the big hope. And of course, that's applicable for so many different industries. So Derek, you use something called IT Compass Framework. How did that come about, and how has that evolved since VocalPoint started?
It's funny because when I say that, it goes back to that Accenture story, right? So you got the big guys that are going in and doing planning, but they're leaving out the procurement. They're leaving out the project management. We basically say, let us take a holistic approach to it. We'll not just come in and do the planning phase, but we'll also, do all the positioning of the vendors. When it comes to procurement, we'll benchmark those vendors and run that entire procurement process. But then we come back on that back end and we project manage it just to make sure everybody's meeting deadlines and things get installed on time, on budget, and something's not overpromised and underdelivered. Because that happens so often in our world. We've had clients that were just trapped in contracts. I had one client, 40 locations, we could only get 7 installed before the vendor was throwing up their hands and saying, we don't know what to do. I said, great, amend the contract to 1 year, and you guys get a year of revenue. The customer gets to find another vendor that can actually do this, and then we all, make some money in the interim, right? Yeah. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to. This was like October of that year. They wanted it to renew in January for 12 months. And so I ended up literally going toe to toe with their CFO and their chief counsel out in, or their general counsel out in California. and got them to back down from a $299,000 early termination fee that they wanted to charge. We got it down to $40,000 and got that other vendor to come in that could do it, and they actually chewed up that money and ate it for the client. So we can get creative, but yeah, I mean, we want to take that holistic approach. So when it comes to the IT Compass framework, that's the model of our framework. We want to just we're not somebody that's just going to throw 3 quotes at you and say, pick one. We want to really hold that client's hand through that process and make sure that they get the outcome they're looking for.
And so do you see, I watched, because we've already established that I'm older than you, I watched the whole continuum of, people had their own data centers, then phase 1 was they put their servers in another data center, and then the next phase was the ASP model where you're going to just park the apps in the new data center, and then it all sort of evolved to cloud. And in that process, all the data center people started going to the Equinix of the world, and at the time Exodus was the largest, and so all the expertise sort of just followed the work. And I wonder if that's what's happening here, because my guess is that most companies that have enough telecom or IT spend, they're having a hard time finding the expertise to come in and do the job that you can do. And so it's easier for them to go find a Derek Roush company to offload all that to than it is to find actual humans that can do a capable job.
Yeah, I think that's true to an extent, Grace. There's definitely, a lot of folks out there that just jumped into the cloud, and then they started kind of pulling some things back, or maybe some things didn't work really well. Architecture is a really good example, right? With, CAD and Revit and such. Those are really heavy applications that weren't working well in the cloud. I think Revit's finally got it, working okay. But so all those guys, either they stayed on-prem or they just did a hybrid model. But I think even today, the hybrid model is probably the biggest model out there right now, where clients are still keeping some of those applications on-prem, but, maybe offloading workloads or DR and business continuity to the cloud, but the cloud's great for so much, but it's just not perfect for everything.
Right. Big fat files of architectural firms are not things that you want to pop up there. So are you seeing any sort of movement? Because as you became the trusted advisor, and I'm sure people ask you for things that you don't even do, right? Are you seeing anything that's moving in particular because AI is coming out, where people used to be like, yeah, I'm going to think about it, but now they're committed to making a change because there's an AI threat or an AI opportunity?
What in particular? Give me an example of what you're talking about, Grace.
I don't know, hey, I've got this technology stack. I can tell it's not going to easily infuse AI capabilities, help me figure out what to do next, kinds of things, where they might not have been happy with NetSuite, for example, but it sort of chugged along and it did its job, but now they got to make a switch. Are you seeing that got to make a switch thing happen any more now than before AI hit the scene?
I think, in the telecom space, there's a lot of that, hardware going away just because of maintenance costs, and especially in like Avaya and Cisco and such. With regard to where I see AI having a big impact, where clients are really looking at it in certain areas, I think probably the number one area right now is cybersecurity. I think that's an area that is very intriguing, because now I can start, running AI queries and, looking for anomalies, before the human even has to get their eyeballs on it. So it's helping to offset some of that workload that the humans having to do. And, some of the AI is getting really smart and really fast at, predicting anomalies. We were just talking about it with the FBI this morning. Just things like, when somebody say just puts a USB device undetected or an unauthorized USB device or any kind of device onto the network. Now we can notify somebody right away where they are able to say, man, I can get to that guy's desk now before he's even able to unplug that device. And those kind of things are real, and that's happening. And the FBI gets involved in some of those things when it's going to lead to a litigation for a large company, because they're trying to really cut down on some of this stuff. And I think AI is really going to help in some of those areas. The other area is physical security too. So a lot of people don't necessarily want to live in a surveillance state. I mean, I'm kind of a libertarian in that sense, but we do live in
it's in the tough shit department at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world, you can't go anywhere without cameras on you, right? So now the cameras are getting smart with facial recognition, and businesses are doing software that's doing AI detection for weapon detection, even under clothes. So that's the kind of stuff that they're getting into now that's really, helping push some of those areas right now.
And so we just sort of off the topic, but we started hearing about, we have looked at selling into the Fed before, but we don't have the sales horsepower to go run that route, but we have looked at a lot of vendors in the FedRAMP program, and the FedRAMP program it's really for the big guys, right? It costs a couple $1 million to qualify, so they're coming out with this new thing called FedRAMP 20X, which is sort of a light version of FedRAMP. But the funny part is, the ones that are in FedRAMP are the old mainstays, and now the government's like, but we want to use this new stuff, and the new stuff can't get into FedRAMP, they're too small. So when you're finding these new innovative solutions that your clients haven't even heard of, are they sort of okay with that, or do you have to take them through this, I know you haven't heard of it, but this is the right answer for you conversation?
So it's interesting when we look at, say, a cybersecurity solution or an AI solution or a compliance solution. They're basically the same discussion. And it's all going to go around your data, right? Where is the data? How safe is the data? How structured is the data? We had a defense contractor that wanted to get FedRAMP certified. They actually wanted to stand up a DR in a FedRAMP data center, and they couldn't find a FedRAMP data center. There's actually, to my knowledge, still only 2 big ones in the U.S. that are truly FedRAMP certified. There are many that will say that they will make you FedRAMP certified, but that's still on you. So, we had to, sit down with them and talk through their requirements. And at the end of the day, this was a small 50-user defense contractor. And we told him, I said, look, the minimum to do a FedRAMP certified DR solution in a data center, you're typically looking at around $10,000 a month for that rack. And they were stunned by that. They wanted to budget, I think, around $25,000 for the whole year. And I'm like, good luck finding that. So they ended up spinning up an S3 bucket, and honestly, it's not going to meet CMMC requirements or FedRAMP requirements, and they'll probably end up coming back to us and having that discussion again when they actually do have the budget. But it's difficult. If you're a small defense contractor, it's a lot to get certified in FedRAMP.
Well, that's why none of them are, and that's why apparently, from what I understand, and you probably have some insights here, I guess they can opt to make an exception if they really want to procure a particular technology.
I think, number one, it's going to be up to whatever part of the DoD is doing service or doing, business with that company. It's up to them, but also, they can basically not get certified. The only time they're going to get caught is if they get audited. But now CMMC, you've got to do the yearly audit. So there's, what is it? I think it's 110 questions that you have to pass in CMMC, and you have to get 100. You can't even get one wrong. So you've got to have a company come in and help you put together the audit. Then you've got to have the, what do they call it, the C3PAO or certified, auditor that can come in. Yeah. So, and those can't be the same company, because that's the fox watching the hen house. So you got to pay for the auditing company, pay for the, company that's going to help you get it all together. And, it ends up being a big spend.
I'm happy to just throw one more comment in here. I'm a huge fan of decentralization of services companies like yours. I think that the large consultancy models are going to yield to companies like yours that can get close enough to the clients to actually understand, at a fundamental level what they're trying to accomplish, the technologies that are out there, and it's your job to run that, treadmill of keeping up with what's going on. For us, I hope the same in software. We have these big mammoth software companies. Well, this AI tooling that's coming out is, I think, increasingly going to give smaller software companies the ability to compete with larger ones, because we too can get closer to the client's needs and what they actually do, and sort of just collapse that whole value chain into, the human in charge of being the expert, bringing along the humans and the clients that you work with so that they become comfortable with the new technologies and with AI. And I think it's a great future for companies like ours that are small and ambitious and are willing to do the work to keep on top of how to help clients take those next steps.
Yeah, I agree. I think CIOs are leaning more and more on advisors to come in and help them, plan and budget and strategize. But for us, the reason why we want to stay above 100 in the user space is just because the smaller guys usually have an MSP that they're leaning on, right?
Yep.
We're not an MSP. We want those guys that have the in-house IT that we can help just come alongside them and be a part of their team. And I think that model works really great in that mid-market and the enterprise space to a degree, we're there just as a resource. We want to be able to provide them as much information as possible so that they can just focus on running their business and staying above board. When it comes to the MSPs, we do work with some of them. In fact, we work with a lot of them that we run their telecom departments, and we'll be their tier 1 support for their telecom. So we can do that for an MSP. But yeah, for the most part, we want to stay a little bit above the threshold of where most MSPs are working.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining us on Smart Company, the podcast. Very enlightening, very exciting, I think, for reasons that we've covered. And I think this will be a tremendous source of insight into the future and beyond for these industries. But thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much for joining. And of course, thanks for everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Take
thanks,
care.
Dave. Thanks, Grace.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.